Today I'd like to talk to you about the cons of nuclear energy. Nuclear energy creates power by means of two reactions, fusion and fission, which, while they sound similar, are two completely different reactions, not to be confused with each other. So thank you to whomever decided on the names, because I struggle with determining between the two. Nuclear fission is when two nuclei are shot at each other at high enough speeds to combine and form a new nucleus, seen in this picture on the left. Fusion is what allows the sun and other stars to put off energy in the form of light. StudentEnergy.org explains that fusion is an extremely difficult state to achieve, and while it has been achieved, fusion is not ready for the commercial scale. Fission, on the other hand, is already working around the globe. Fission is the splitting of an atom. The separation of the atom releases heat energy that in turn energizes water molecules into steam and is then channeled to turn a turbine. This is an example of fission. Fission requires heavy metal elements such as uranium and plutonium to break apart. Certain isotopes, most notably uranium-235, which is naturally occurring, are fissile. This means that they can be made to undergo fission when bombarded with neutrons. The fission process also produces neutrons, so that a chain reaction can be set up wherein each fission event can initiate another. Many people disapprove of nuclear energy because of health effects. Quoting the EPA, understanding the type of radiation received, alpha, beta, gamma, or X-ray, the way the person is exposed, external versus internal, and for how long a person is exposed are all important in estimating health effects. To further explain, I'll give you a scenario. Person A is exposed to internal alpha particles and person B is exposed to external alpha particles. Person B feels just fine and carries on with his or her business. Sadly, person A becomes extremely sick with radiation poisoning. Alpha particles are too large to pass through the skin and don't have an effect from external exposure, while internal exposure does. To determine the type of exposure requires expensive equipment and special operators, making the possibility of radioactive exposure from nuclear power plants not worth the risk. Certain groups are more sensitive to radiation exposure. In this group are pregnant women and children. At the developmental ages, fetus and children alike have cells that divide at a higher rate, allowing a greater opportunity for radiation to interfere and cause significant damage. A real-life example of the health effects can be seen in the Chernobyl accident. According to the World Nuclear Association, the accident destroyed the Chernobyl 4 reactor, killing 30 operators and firemen within 3 months and several other deaths later. One person was killed immediately and a second died in a hospital soon after as a result of injuries received. Another person is reported to have died at the time from coronary thrombosis. Acute radiation syndrome, ARS, was originally diagnosed in 237 people on site and involved with the cleanup, and it was later confirmed in 134 cases. Of these people, 28 died as a result of ARS within a few weeks of the accident. Nuclear energy also affects the health of the environment. When a fission reaction occurs, the used uranium or plutonium becomes highly radioactive. According to the World Energy Council, the level of radioactivity actually diminishes quite quickly, but it remains at levels which are dangerous to most living organisms for thousands of years. To prevent exposure, the radioactive waste must be sealed in an underground concrete container. This container must have an active cooling system because for the first few years, the materials are still producing a significant amount of heat. If the cooling system fails or is inadequate, the container will not be able to hold in the radioactive materials. In a very serious fuel melt event, the radioactive materials may escape the reactor and contaminate structures, posing a risk to people and the environment, as happened at both the Japanese and Russian plants. Heat is another byproduct of nuclear reactions. Only 30% of the heat energy produced by the reaction is captured, which leaves 70% to be released into the environment, either into water sources or the atmosphere. Adding more heat to the environment at a time when people believe in global warming is not helping nuclear energy any. Nuclear energy is more costly than just to the health of people and the environment. It also draws on our country's purse strings. Citing the research of the Union of Concerned Scientists, the first chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, Lewis Strauss, predicted in a 1954 speech that nuclear power would someday make electricity too cheap to meter. A half-century later, we have learned that nuclear power is instead too expensive to finance. In the early stages of nuclear energy, constructing the facilities proved so costly that many were abandoned before completion. Between 2002 and 2008, for example, cost estimates for new nuclear plant construction rose from between $2 and $4 billion per unit to $9 billion per unit. Because the risk and recent lack of support in nuclear energy, private investors are not looking to finance nuclear projects, which means the money to build these plants is coming from the government, which in turn means it's coming from taxpayers. A 2009 UCS report estimated that taxpayers could be on the hook for anywhere from $360 billion to $1.6 trillion if the then current proposals for nuclear expansion were realized. Nuclear energy has proven itself to be a risk, high-cost venture and is not worth our money. Nuclear energy seemed like a good idea when the world was going through the oil crisis, but that issue was resolved by creating another issue. The time for nuclear energy has come and passed if further improvements in safety, technology, and cost cannot be made. Thank you.